And now it's time for another episode of St. Louis 7, following a podcast on OT with Oliver. Today's episode is around Anne Lemons Pollack, author of Lost Restaurants of St. Louis, published in November of 2018. It's a guilty pleasure of mine. I just love it. We talked about places like the Parkmore. We talked about the King Louis. We talked about the Mutual and Biggies. And one of the things Anne I liked about, we talked about how the 1904 World Fair really kind of shaped where St. Louis went in the early 1900s, in the mid 1900s. And I had a ball. What's the new book called and when's it coming out?
The new book is called Iconic Restaurants of St. Louis, which means that I could include new restaurants as well as some old favorites I couldn't get into, lost restaurants. And it comes out, my official publication date is November the 2nd. May take a little while longer than that, but not much.
Is there a book that you wanted to be in the first one that now you found space to be in the second one?
Oh, that's a good question. If you're going to talk about iconic restaurants of St. Louis and not be able to talk about Tony's, for example, it seemed sinful. But since the publisher was quite specific that those restaurants in the first book all had to be closed except for maybe two, and I did persuade them to put in a third one. I left Tony's out. I knew it would take space and there were great stories, but it's in the new book.
For people who live in St. Louis, if you own a coffee table, you cannot not have this book on your coffee table.
Or there's another room where it seems to be very popular too.
All right, Ann, let's go ahead and get started. St. Louis 7, first question we ask everybody: where'd you go to high school and what do you remember?
I went to Deloge High School in Deloge, Missouri, where I grew up and where my dad taught. And the best thing about high school that I remember was the high school musicals. We did them before almost anybody else did. And our Les Rosenstengel was wonderful.
What should St. Louisans know about the class of 72?
The class of 72 were restaurants that changed the way St. Louisans eat. And it was places like the Jefferson Avenue Boarding House, Balaban's, Duff's, Yenching, and there's one that I'm missing in my head. But they were so named by the restaurant critic at the Post-Dispatch before I married him in 1990.
What, if anything, makes the St. Louis restaurant situation scene unique?
One of the things that people from both coasts talk to me about is how much easier it is to get good food here at a reasonable price. And I think that's very true. For our size, we have a far wider selection and far better food than cities, the equivalent inside. I like Kansas City, but we've got Kansas City trumped.
When you go to Ted Drew's, what do you order?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably something with a baby Ruth in it.
When you drive and encounter 10 stop signs, how many do you roll?
One.
You're a better man than I am. Do you happen to have a favorite concert or event?
Oh, practically anywhere in St. Louis theater, especially some of the small, more experimental ones. It's not so much the venue itself as it is what's on stage anywhere. And we're really lucky about that. Once theater cranks up and gets going again, it's going to be back to having a good time. Whether you want something big and splashy at the Muni or some little tiny black box place with a play freshly translated from the Polish, we've got it.
I know my wife and my youngest are really missing the Muni. How about you?
Yes, I miss the Muni. I miss the music. I miss Ronnie's Rocky Mountain ice cream cones there. I said to him the other day, that I would plan what I wore to the Muni because the chocolate would shatter all over my chest, and I would have to wear something dark so that I could get away with that.
So,
It's a real, literally in the proper sense of the word, unique tradition.
I agree. So again, the book out already is Lost Restaurants of St. Louis. The new one's coming out in November of 2020. Great Christmas idea. And I enjoyed our time to hear the podcast, the episode. Anybody who wants to do that, they can search wherever they get their podcast. Go to OT with Oliver. Don't forget you can subscribe to this on YouTube. You can subscribe to where you listen to your podcast. Here's the last question when it comes to people who sit down and have a St. Louis 7 with me. What makes you proud to be a St. Louisan?
Oh gosh. I think the restaurants as much as anything. I love our restaurants. I love our restaurateurs. Any tradition that brings out a guy that's as important to the business as Danny Meyer, who is no longer a St. Louisan, but he is the St. Louis restaurateur writ large, and our guys in their own way are frequently just as good.
And this hopefully comes off sincere. I'm just a huge fan. I love you documenting all these things that either I didn't know about or my kids are not going to know about. And I'm really thankful that you spend the time and you put pen to paper on that.
Thank you. It has been so much fun researching this stuff.
Stay healthy, be good.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye.